All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a world where science literally speaks for the dead. It's the incredible field of forensic medicine, a place where the tiniest, smallest clue can unravel the biggest mysteries and, well, tell the final story of a life.
I mean, this is the big question, right? When a life ends in silence and there are no witnesses left to speak, how in the world do we find out what really happened? Well, that's exactly the mystery forensic medicine exists to solve. So yeah, let's jump right in.
Okay, so first up, Part 1, Speaking for the Dead. We're going to take a look at the history here. And you might actually be surprised. I mean, this partnership between medicine and the law, it goes back way further than you probably think. So, what exactly is forensic medicine? Well, you can think of it as a bridge, right? It connects the world of medicine with the world of law. It's all about using hard, scientific facts from the human body itself, to answer critical questions in a courtroom. It's about making sure justice is built on a foundation of solid, undeniable evidence.
And when I say this goes back a long way, I mean it's ancient. We're talking over 4,000 years ago, with the Code of Hammurabi regulating doctors. You've got Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, right? Studying how deadly certain wounds were. Fast forward to the 6th century, and the Justinian Code is making it official, bringing medical experts into legal cases. And all of that history leads up to the very first recorded medical legal autopsy way back in 1302. It just goes to show you, this quest for truth using medicine, it's a timeless human endeavor.
All right, let's move on to Part 2, What's in a Name? Because think about it. Before an investigator can even begin to figure out what happened, they have to answer that first, most basic question of all. Who is this person?
And one of the most powerful tools they have for that very first step is the human skull. Seriously, it's like a vault of information. It can tell them so much, starting with one of the most basic, but absolutely critical details, figuring out if the person was male or female.
And to a trained eye, the differences are just striking. A male skull, it's generally heavier, it's got that more rugged brow ridge. A female skull, on the other hand, tends to be lighter, the bone is smoother, the forehead's more vertical. We're not talking about subtle little hints here. These are clear biological signposts that point investigators in the right direction right from the get-go.
And the level of detail is it's incredible. You can zoom in on just one single bone, like the mandible, the jawbone. Look at the differences here. A male jaw is usually larger, thicker, with a squarer chin. A female jaw, smaller, thinner, with a more rounded chin. Even the angle of the jaw tells a story. Every single one of these little details adds another piece to that big identity puzzle.
But hey, identification doesn't just stop with the bones. Not at all. Teeth are huge, they can tell you about age, diseases, and of course, match to dental records. Fingerprints, that's a one-of-a-kind signature. And then you have all the personal stuff. Tattoos, scars from an old injury or a surgery. Each one of those things helps build a complete, unique picture of who this person was.
So once they have an idea of who the person is, the focus shifts. And that brings us to Part 3, the story of a body. This is where the experts really start to piece together the narrative, the story of what happened.
Which leads us to the big question here: how did they die? You see, the body itself holds the story, and the job of a forensic pathologist is basically to learn how to read that silent language. Now, we've all heard the term asphyxia on crime shows, right? But here's something important to get straight. It's not actually a cause of death, it's a mode of death. Think of it like this. The mode is what happened inside the body. In this case, it was starved of oxygen. The cause is why that happened. Was it drowning? Was it strangulation? That why is what the forensic evidence has to uncover.
The human body records trauma with just amazing precision. A burn from a fire looks totally different from a scald from, say, hot coffee, which might leave these telltale streaks where it ran down the skin. A corrosive acid, that leaves its own unique signature, totally changing the color of the tissue. Every single mark, every injury tells its own distinct story about what went down.
But get this, some of the most powerful evidence is stuff you can't even see with the naked eye. So let's move on to Part 4, the invisible clues, and step into the world of toxicology and trace evidence.
And a perfect example of this is the latent fingerprint. When your finger touches a surface, it leaves behind this invisible trace of oils and sweat in a totally unique pattern. So the big challenge is, how do you see something that's invisible? Well, the answer is you have to develop it. You have to make the invisible visible.
And it's a really meticulous process. An investigator has to choose exactly the right powder, one that'll contrast with the surface, and then they gently dust the area. And then, it's almost like magic. The unique ridges and whorls of a fingerprint start to appear. Now, on tricky surfaces like paper, they'll use chemicals to do the work, basically coaxing that hidden print into view.
So, just how powerful is forensic science, especially when someone tries to destroy all the evidence? Well, let's take a look at one of the most famous or infamous cases in history, the acid bath murder case from 1949. So, the killer, a man named John George Hay, he thought he'd committed the perfect crime. He dissolved his victim's body in a huge tank of acid, but what he didn't count on was the resilience of evidence. Investigators started sifting through what was left, this sludge. And in it, they found bone fragments, they found gallstones, and, this is the key, they found an intact set of acrylic dentures. And in this incredible moment, a dentist recognized those dentures. He knew them. They were the exact ones he had made for the victim, Mrs. Deacon. And that was the positive ID that sealed the conviction.
Okay, so gathering all this amazing evidence, that's only half the battle. Now, all of it has to stand up in a court of law. And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, in the witness box. And this is a really important distinction to make. A medical expert who testifies in court, they're not there to guess about who's guilty or innocent. Their one and only job is to be an authority on the facts. Their job is to present the objective, scientific truth that their examination uncovered. In a way, they're the voice of the evidence itself.
And presenting those facts takes an incredible amount of discipline. The expert has to be perfectly prepared, they have to speak slowly and clearly, and use simple language, no technical jargon. They have to avoid any kind of dramatic or exaggerated language like calling something a frightful injury. They have to stick to exactly what they know and not get drawn into speculating. It's really the ultimate act of translating complex science into simple, undeniable truth for a jury.
Which, brings us right back to where we started, back to that first question we asked. After everything we've looked at, the science of identification, the stories that injuries tell, the power of these invisible clues, can we really say that the dead can tell tales? And the answer is absolutely, yes. Through this incredibly meticulous application of science, forensic medicine does so much more than just look at a body. It listens to it. It makes sure that even when there's nothing but silence, the truth will always, always find a voice.